Human cognition, by its nature, tends toward homeostasis. It seeks energy economy through the automation of perception. We often glide along the surface of phenomena, perceiving them as stable and immutable objects, although in reality we are dealing with dynamic flows of information. A genuine intellectual breakthrough occurs when we consciously disrupt this mental inertia by applying the method of repeated apperception. This is a process in which the same pattern of being undergoes intensive reconsideration from different angles of ontological illumination. I enter thinking slowly without a jolt. Attention gathers like light in a lens, and the surrounding space becomes clear. Mentis code philosophy for me is a mode of inner clarity, where each impulse passes through a test of silence. Here haste dissolves, and with it the excess weight of interpretations. I grant thoughts the right to move at their own pace. A sense of structure arises earlier than words. Thinking regains flexibility and precision simultaneously. In this state, each familiar image opens through a fresh facet, and consciousness tunes itself to a rhythm in which form and meaning merge into a single trajectory of perception. When we change the vector of attention, a certain derivation of habitual content occurs. Meanings are released from layers of cognitive routine, revealing their primary architectonics. This is very similar to a quantum superposition of meanings, where the object of observation reveals new properties depending on the observer's position. The repetition of form here plays the role of a rhythmic foundation without limitation, helping tune inner resonance to the frequency of truth. At the point of the highest intensity of such contemplation, Epiphany is born. This is a sudden transition from the quantitative accumulation of visual or intellectual data to a qualitative transformation of understanding. Such a flash of insight ceases to be merely a product of neural activity. It becomes an act of existential honesty toward oneself. We cease to merely fix external contours and instead begin to feel the pulsation of ideas that hold the framework of reality. Such vision requires the abandonment of simplified schemes. Knowledge here appears as a ready-made recipe or as a set of instructions, where a living structure is born and constantly completed within our consciousness.
This is the path of authentic being, where each new circle of observation raises us to a higher level of understanding of our own involvement in the overall rhythm of existence. We learn to see energy behind form and behind a pattern, an infinity of possibilities for renewal. The process of such deep gazing activates a mechanism of intellectual diffusion when the boundary between subject and object becomes permeable. We enter a state of cognitive fluidity, where the familiar discreteness of perception yields to continuity. Each iteration of observing a pattern functions as a subtle adjustment of the mental lens, removing aberrations that arose through social filters or previous limited experience. At this point, the phenomenon of semantic saturation arises. A form that previously seemed like a static decoration suddenly reveals its fractal nature. We begin to realize that the smallest element of a structure contains within itself the logic of the whole.
This knowledge can no longer be exhausted through description. It becomes part of our neurobiological architecture, altering the very chemistry of expectation toward the future. Such a transformation of perspective grants a special type of resilience. When a person comprehends the inner rhythm of things, they cease to depend on chaotic external impulses. This is a state of high intellectual autonomy, where each new angle becomes a cause for doubt, or an additional source of energy for synthesis. We become architects of our own semantic fields, where epiphany serves as a zakanamirni result of conscious presence in every moment of intellectual search. This transformation transforms dry logic into living vision. We no longer collect facts like fragments of a shattered mirror. We see a holistic pattern of light even before it touches the surface. Thus is born genuine freedom of thought, grounded in an understanding of the fundamental laws of harmony that permeate both the micro-world of our thoughts and the macro-structures of reality. Awareness of the fractality of being inevitably leads to intellectual decompression. When the pressure of habitual definitions subsides, space arises for radical openness, which may be called cognitive humility before the complexity of structure. We stop imposing our expectations on patterns and instead allow form itself to speak through us. This is a moment of genuine ontological empathy, where intellect becomes a careful guide of truth. Such an approach transforms the very nature of creative and analytical action. Any task is now regarded as a node of interwoven semantic lines, awaiting its unique angle of illumination. An effect of intellectual synesthesia arises when we begin to see the sound of ideas and feel the texture of logical connections. This makes our thinking volumetric, freeing it from the flat linearity characteristic of purely mechanical accumulation of information. This is precisely where the viability of genuine knowledge lies. It improves memory, structures consciousness, making it plastic and at the same time unshakable in its foundation. Epiphany in this context becomes a point of assembly, where disparate fragments of experience suddenly resonate in a single act of understanding. This is a state of ultimate clarity that brings a sense of intellectual calm, as we no longer search for truth outside ourselves. We discover it as an integral part of the inner architecture of our being. Such awakening through the rhythm of form allows one to act with surgical precision and poetic freedom simultaneously. Each step becomes an act of creation, and each gaze, a contribution to the shared field of meanings.
We move from survival in a stream of data to conscious management of our own cognitive landscape, where each shift of focus opens new horizons for self-actualization and the improvement of the surrounding world. When we reach this stage of intellectual transparency, an effect of cognitive resonance arises. We begin to perceive previously invisible isomorphisms, similarities of structures across entirely different spheres of being. What once seemed a chaotic accumulation of circumstances reveals itself as a coherent sequence of transitions, where each event is merely a modulation of the overall rhythm. This knowledge becomes our inner support, allowing us to maintain balance even in moments of extreme turbulence in the external environment. Here, it is appropriate to recall the concept of attractors in dynamical systems. Our mind, trained to see through epiphany, begins to recognize these hidden centers of gravity around which reality is structured.
We cease to struggle with consequences, as our gaze now reaches the level of root causes. This is a transition from reactive survival to proactive construction of meanings. Each moment of contemplation turns into an act of intellectual investment, where we enrich our own capacity to understand deep connections. Such integrity of perception generates a special form of honesty. We learn to perceive artificial illusions and simplified explanations differently, as the complexity of structure itself becomes a source of aesthetic and intellectual satisfaction. Knowledge transforms into a state of being, where we ourselves become the embodiment of the rhythm we observe. This is true authenticity, to be synchronous with the inner logic of things, while preserving the uniqueness of one's own creative signature. Ultimately, this path leads to the realization that any pattern is open code. We understand it, read it, and add new lines with each insight. Epiphany becomes a new beginning, a launch platform for even deeper immersion into the ocean of the unknown, where each wave represents a new angle of illumination of the same eternal truth. Theophany, alongside the rhythm of form, creates an intriguing intellectual paradox. It suggests that the divine or the absolute manifests precisely through the geometry and sequence of being, allowing us to glimpse beyond the boundaries of our inner world. We begin to see in recurring patterns a sacred regularity that leads to awakening. Now I feel how thinking enters a state of release without loss of semantic tension. This is a moment of inner balance where nothing more needs to be added. My Mentis code philosophy manifests here as a state of coherence, when attention holds wholeness effortlessly, controlling dispersion among forms. I do not seek to fix this experience. It does not require fixation. It is enough to allow it to be, as an inner mode of perception in which thinking enters into precise contact with reality. In this state, each form retains its complexity, yet no longer creates overload. I remain present, having found a point of response, in a rhythm where the answer already corresponds to the needs of vision. In this final realization, the intellectual journey closes into an ideal sphere where each analytical step served only as preparation for direct contemplation of the whole. We emerge from this experience informed, having structured thinking differently. Our inner organization now withstands the tension of truth without the need for simplifications. The world ceases to be a collection of objects and becomes a score, where each of us performs our own part, resonating with the fundamental silence from which any form is born.